My son Ernie is turning in circles. From our perspective, Ernie is moving and the room he's in is standing still. But from Ernie's perspective, he is standing still and the room around him is moving. This type of illusion is called apparent motion. Apparent motion is a motion of an object that is not real, but an illusion caused by the movement of the observer. As we've already discussed, the Earth is constantly moving. We are rotating around our own axis at the same time that we are revolving around the sun. This constant movement creates the illusion of what we call apparent motion of celestial objects. And these objects include the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, and anything else that is outside of Earth's atmosphere. Today we're going to consider just the most important celestial object in our sky, the sun. In order to understand the apparent motion of celestial objects like the sun, it helps to envision the sky as a dome with a person standing right in the middle. Now, the basic apparent motion of the sun is that it rises in the eastern side, it climbs up, 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 up in the sky until it gets to its highest point, which we call noon, or sometimes solar noon, and then it starts to descend down the other side of the arc until it sets on the western side. Let's review. Number 1. Because Earth rotates, the sun appears to move across the sky from east to west. Number 2. Solar noon is when the sun is at the highest point in its arc. Now, this basic model becomes more complicated for two important reasons. The first is that your latitude determines where the sun appears at solar noon. If you live in the northern hemisphere, solar noon is going to be in the southern sky. If you live in the southern hemisphere, the sun still goes from east to west, but solar noon is going to appear in the northern sky. The reason for this is that the sun's direct rays always shine on the low latitudes, which is basically near the equator. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, you have to look south to see the sun, and if you're in the southern hemisphere, you have to look north to see the sun. The formula for figuring out the altitude of the sun at solar noon is equal to 90 degrees, which would be directly overhead, minus your latitude. So in Rochester, New York, the latitude is about 43 degrees. So 90 minus 43 means that the altitude of the sun at solar noon would be 47 degrees above the horizon. The second reason that the model becomes more complicated is because the Earth is tilted 23.5 degrees on its axis. The reason for the seasons is because of the Earth's tilt. The seasons are caused by Earth's tilt. The seasons are caused by Earth's tilt. That is one of the number one misconceptions in Earth science. People think that it's caused by some other reason, but it's caused by Earth's tilt. In this diagram, you can notice that Earth's tilt is always pointed in the same direction. We call that parallelism of the axes. And you'll notice that at one time of year, the North Pole is pointed towards the sun, and that would be summer in the northern hemisphere, and it would be winter in the southern hemisphere. On June 21st, when the North Pole is tilted toward the sun's light is directed at the latitude 23.5 degrees north of the equator, which is known as the Tropic of Cancer. This causes an important change in the sun's apparent path through the sky. Basically everything, sunrise, solar noon, and sunset, is shifted 23.5 degrees to the north. The sun's path looks like this. The sun rises 23.5 degrees to the north of east. At solar noon, the sun will be 23.5 degrees higher in the sky, and the sun will set 23.5 degrees north of west. Also, notice how long the sun is in the sky. This is why days are longer in the summertime. You'll notice on the other side here that the North Pole is pointed away from the sun, and so that would be winter in the northern hemisphere and summer in the southern hemisphere. On December 21st, when the North Pole is tilted away from the sun's light is directed at the latitude 23.5 degrees south of the equator, which is known as the Tropic of Capricorn. This causes the apparent path of the sun to shift everything, sunrise, solar noon, and sunset, 23.5 degrees to the south. The sun's path looks like this. The sun rises 23.5 degrees south of east. At solar noon, the sun will be 23.5 degrees lower in the sky, and the sun will set 23.5 degrees south of west. Notice how briefly the sun is in the sky. This is why the days are shorter in winter. The other two dates are the equinoxes. The one on the top is March 21st, that's the spring equinox, and the one on the bottom is September 23rd, which is the autumn equinox. And in both of the equinoxes, the sun's direct rays are focused on the equator. On the equinox, every part of the planet experiences 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of darkness. The sun rises directly in the east. Solar noon for Rochester has the sun about 47 degrees above the horizon in the southern sky, and the sun sets directly in the west. Let's review. On the equinoxes, March 21st and September 23rd, the sun rises directly in the east and sets directly in the west. The altitude of the sun at solar noon equals 90 degrees minus your latitude. On the summer solstice, June 21st, sunrise, sunset, and solar noon are shifted 23.5 degrees to the north compared to the equinox. And on the winter solstice, December 21st, sunrise, sunset, and solar noon are shifted 23.5 degrees to the south compared to the equinox. And lastly, the seasons are caused by Earth's tilt. To help us understand how the sun's path changes at different latitudes, I've asked some friends of mine from around the planet to tell us how the sun moved through their sky. Here we see Wilson Commencement High School in Rochester, New York, and we are going to zoom out from there, and we are going to be making our next stop in Cape Coast, Ghana, which is just north of the equator. This is my friend Deborah with her family. She was my wife's teacher in college, and we used to babysit for her kids. And she was kind enough to make this video for us.
Aquaba, welcome Earth Science students of Rochester, New York. You are now in Ghana, West Africa, the beautiful nation here on the Gulf of Guinea. Today is September 27th, 2013. It's about 1:30 in the afternoon, and my name is Deborah. I'm going to be spending a little bit of time with you today sharing about this amazing place. It is the rainy season, just starting the rainy season here. And as you can see, the sky is quite gray and cloudy, but at noon the sun is directly overhead.
Here we see the path of the sun for latitude 8 degrees north on the equinox. Notice that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, but at solar noon the sun would actually be 82 degrees above the horizon in the southern sky.
As the season changes and the short rains end, it will be warming up, and our average temperatures will be around 85 to 90 degrees on any given day. The sun rose this morning about 6 a.m. and it sets here by 6:15, I would say, in the evening. But it doesn't get dark until about 7 o'clock. We are in an area here in the south along the coast where there's actually 4 seasons. So that's something that is, you think tropical West Africa, there aren't really seasons here, but there actually are. We don't have snow, we don't have the same kind of seasons that you do, but there are seasonal patterns that happen. And part of what that does is it does affect the way people's lives change and the kinds of things that they're involved with. The weather and the rain, of course, affects the farming season and what people can grow and when they're going to grow it. Also, now that it is this time of year, we have a lot of festivals, and so the seasonal activities affect what's going to be happening. So we just had a wonderful festival here in Cape Coast, and part of it was celebrating the opening of the fishing season. So you can see we live in a still very active fishing community here on the Gulf of Guinea, and it is quite beautiful. So again, wishing you a wonderful day here from Ghana, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.
So here we're zooming out of Africa, and our next stop is going to be Honey Eye Falls, New York, where I made a little video. It's a little bit shorter than some of the other ones because I had some technical difficulties. But here we're going to be at latitude about 43 degrees north of the equator. Hello Earth Science students in Rochester, New York. This is Andy Webster and I'm standing here in Honey Eye Falls, New York. The date is October 3rd and the time is about 5:30 p.m. The season here, we're still towards the beginning of our fall season, and that means that the sun only gets up to about 47 degrees above above the horizon in the southern sky at noon. Here on the equinox at latitude 43 degrees north, the sun rises directly in the east and sets directly in the west. And at solar noon it is 47 degrees above the horizon in the southern sky. We have pretty close to about 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of darkness, even though we're a little bit past the fall equinox. It usually gets light around 6 a.m. and it gets dark around 6 p.m. At nighttime, where we live, no matter what time of year it is, we see Polaris in the northern sky about 43 degrees above the horizon. So zooming out of Honey Eye Falls, our next stop is actually going to be Haines, Alaska at 59 degrees north. We're going to be listening to my friend Mike Wald, who was one of my college teachers in Vermont. He taught at the Center for Northern Studies about, among other things, life in Alaska. So he's going to tell us about how life looks at 59 degrees north of the equator.
Hey Earth Science students, this is Michael Wald. I'm here in Haines, Alaska. It's Friday, September 20th, and I wanted to go down to the beach, but it's raining awful hard, so I'm not gonna, and I'll just make this little movie here for your Earth Science class. I'm down at the waterfront in Haines on a rainy fall day, and you can see it's pretty socked in. There's Lynn Canal over there, big deep glacial fjord that extends up into southeast Alaska. And it's the beginning of winter here. It's fall time, and we had a beautiful sunny summer, and now we're getting a lot of gray and rain. And if you could see the mountains across the way, buried in the clouds, it started to snow up high, and that snow line will just creep down and down over the next 2 months until we've got quite a bit of snow here in town. Some years it snows, you know, there will be 10 feet of snow on the ground here in Haines. It's noon right now, and if we could see the sun somewhere up there in the murk, it would be right about there. Not real high in the sky, maybe 3 fists up. If you extend your arm and put your fists out and stack 3 of them on top of each other, that's about where the sun would be, and it's basically due south. Solar noon is right about noon.
So on the equinox at latitude 59 degrees north, the sun rises directly east and it sets directly west, and at solar noon it's only going to be 31 degrees above the horizon in the southern sky.
We got light this morning at about 6 a.m. It'll get dark all right about 8. We've got 12 hours of time when the sun is above the horizon this time of year, just like everywhere else on Earth. And it's the equinox tomorrow. You know, one of the questions here is, you know, what do people in this part of the world do this time of year? How does the weather affect it? We live in a fishing town, a tourist town, and as the weather gets colder, the tourists leave, and a lot of we have some seasonal residents, and they leave. And the other thing is that, you know, being a salmon fishing town, salmon only run during the summer. They go way far out to sea during the winter. And so the fishing fleet, they're just finishing up. You can see there's a lot of boats there in the harbor, and in the summer all those boats are out fishing. And so that's one of the big things. We are busy here, cutting firewood, putting fish in the freezer, and there's a lot of bears in town right now. They're also fishing, and yeah, that's kind of the deal. So that's my little piece on fall here in Haines, Alaska, where things are looking pretty gray and rainy today. So hope you guys have a good fall, and it'll be snowing here soon.
We're now going to be zooming out of Alaska, and our next stop is going to be south of the equator in the city of Morogoro, Tanzania. This is Karsus, who is the brother of one of my students, Nyakwazigria Mawazo, and she was kind enough to get in touch with him and ask him to do this video project for us. And he's going to tell us about what life is like 7 degrees south of the equator.
Hello Earth Science students in Rochester, New York City. My name is Moses Njeo, right here standing in Morogoro, Tanzania. I'm glad to share with you some weather information here in Tanzania. At the moment, we are in summer season. Today, this morning, we saw the first light at 6 a.m. and we're expecting the sun to set at 6 p.m. in the evening. It's noon, the sun is very hot. The position of the sun, as you can see, is just right above my head.
On the equinox at latitude 7 degrees south of the equator, the sun still rises in the east and sets in the west, and solar noon is going to be 83 degrees above the horizon in the northern sky.
The sun is shining throughout the day. As you can see, the sky is clear. It's now around 6 p.m. The sun is now setting down in the east. Down Morogoro, we're having summer. The effect to people is drought. We have more drought than other seasons. The farms are dry, the animals don't get enough grass, and water is somehow difficult to get.
The last stop on our tour as we zoom out of Tanzania is going to be Brisbane, Australia, where we can meet Zoe Kensington, who's a professional basketball player in Australia. 3. And boom goes the dynamite. Brisbane, Australia is 27 degrees south of the equator, and Zoe's going to tell us what life is like 27 degrees south of the equator.
Hello Earth Science students in Rochester, New York. This is Zoe Kensington and I'm standing in Brisbane, Australia. It's the 21st of September today and it's spring here at the moment. And the first day of spring was on the 21st of September here. It's a beautiful day. It's about 27 degrees. Feels a little bit like summer. It's quite a hot spring to start us off. With a couple of days ago it was about 32 degrees, so it's a little bit hot for a normal summer. So it's been good. So I'll just show you a little bit about Australia here. It's actually quite windy here today, so quite a big sea breeze. So you can probably hear that. Sorry for that. Hopefully I can still be clear to you. The sun rose at about 5:40 a.m. I think it was that it rose this morning. So it's quite early and it's just getting earlier and earlier as summer comes. And also the sunset will be about, I think it's about 5:45 p.m. until the sun goes down. But the sun is just in that direction of me. It's shining quite bright still at 3 p.m. Which is nice. It's nice and cool.
And on the equinox at latitude 27 degrees south, the sun will rise and set directly in the east and the west, and the altitude of the sun at solar noon will be 63 degrees above the horizon in the northern sky.
I've got a few questions that I need to answer. So one of the questions were is if we can see the northern star. The answer is no, unfortunately we can't, because we are in the southern hemisphere. But we have a 4-star constellation. It's called the Southern Cross, that you can see every night. You can also find it if you've ever seen the New Zealand or Australian flag. The Southern Cross is actually on the flags, so have a look at those if you haven't seen it before. Also the ocean here, we wanted to know if it's warm or cold. It's actually, it's a little bit lukewarm. I went for a bit of a swim today. I wouldn't call it warm, you'd probably say it's quite cold, but we'll just go down and have a bit of a feel how the temperature is now. So it is swimmable, but in New Zealand at the moment, I know a little bit more about New Zealand weather. It's very cold and not many people are swimming at this time of spring. It's actually raining there at the moment, as I've talked to my family today, which is good for the dairy farmers there because they all farm and in calving season. But yeah, I know that they don't swim there at the moment. We swim in New Zealand about Christmas time. It gets quite warm to swim there. But yeah, Brisbane weather is it's very nice throughout summer and spring's actually been quite hot this spring coming into summer. And also this time in Brisbane the weather begins to get very warm, so even though it's spring we start to act like it's summer early. Many people go to the beaches at this time and they put on their jandals, as we call in New Zealand, but they call them thongs here, so a bit of a rivalry between the two countries, but we're pretty much brother and sister countries, so get along really well. And yeah, that's me, Zoe, from Australia, and I hope you have fun in America there, and this is Australia. See you later.